So let's start going. So I'll just go by the agenda. So I'll give you a brief about what the product folks are, a brief about Rohan. We'll go along with Rohan has prepared a PPT. He'll walk us through. Feel free to ask questions in chat. We'll be taking it as and when we can, and hopefully we'll have a great session. Just to make sure Rohan and myself are quite audible, there's no problem. If anyone can just say yes on the chat, it'll be helpful. Cool. Cool. So just giving a brief intro to the product folks. The product folks is a volunteer driven community of product managers, product enthusiasts, designers, marketers, and we all work together to have this ecosystem up and running, connecting, helping each other, and so that we can grow as a person and as a community. Also, we have some volunteer driven initiatives which are volunteer driven innovation, something like learn with PMs, and also we have said insurgio.club, which is an APM driven community. Giving a brief about Rohan. Rohan is been around Amazon in the last 4 years. Earlier than that, he was in Bank of America. Before moving to US, he was in India working with Cognizant. Yeah. Correct. Okay, guys. So, and over to you, Rohan. Welcome. Hope we have a great session. Let's get going.
Thanks, Alankrit. So am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you're audible, Rohan.
Okay, great. So I'm sharing the link to the PPT in case I've shared it in the chat in case anybody wants to refer the same.
Sure.
I'm gonna share my screen and just dig deep into it. So Alankrit, would you just make me the host and then I'll take over the screen share.
Definitely, I will. Yep.
Okay. So let me know if you can see the screen.
Yep, bro, we can.
Okay. Awesome. So thank you for this opportunity, and everyone, thank you for their time coming along. So I have tried to draft a presentation. For background in Amazon, we don't use presentations, we use narratives. So it's been a hard one after 4 years, me back on presentations. But I'll give my version to you guys and look forward to questions as they come on. Okay, so let's start going. So this is just a little thank you note to all the product folks giving me an opportunity, and Alankrit, who kind of helped me gauge the audience, the right audience to organize this event, and helping making sure this presentation is getting all the feedback it deserves and getting in front of you guys. I have a disclaimer here. It just says that anything that I say about my organization is just purely my personal opinion and doesn't reflect anything to do with the organization itself, and it doesn't intend to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organizations. And this is more of an informational purposes. And this is my version. I have a bibliography at the end, the resources where I picked up all the information. So feel free to dig into the presentation, one of the last slides, to see all the resources. This is the agenda that I have set up for this session. First, of a couple of first slides would include my career journey, how I became a product manager. Then I'll talk about some sales trends and impacts what this coronavirus situation has brought into the e-commerce industries. Then I'll share what Amazon's readiness or reaction was to this whole situation. But before I would jump into Amazon readiness, I'll talk a little bit about Amazon shipping model. So as a customer, you should understand what and why things are happening the way they happen on Amazon. And this shipping model is irrespective of the coronavirus situation, just to educate you guys on how Amazon shops and delivers stuff. I can pause in between, and I'll have everybody, those of you who are interested to take up questions, to raise hands or throw up questions that I think Alankrit would pop up in between. So I'll pause the slides before I move from one section to the other, and I have a time at the end also for a lot of other questions at an overall stage.
Sounds good.
Right.
Let's get going.
Okay. So my career journey. So I started the evolution path of being an engineer back in 2005. I enrolled myself into telecom engineering, just looking at the boom of telecom industry at that point of time. It kind of zealed me on learning what telecom was about. I think in the second year, I kind of understood that whatever I was learning was not much of what the industry was doing, but more essentially a good overview of how satellites and how navigation systems work. I had more interest towards learning how GSM and phone networks worked. So that is when I kind of zealed my last year interest in my engineering towards those subjects and curriculum. I had more passion of working into telecom industry, but I think I would say by the end of our engineering times, and Alankrit would relate to it, the beautiful recession had hit. So any such offers were getting either rescinded or getting delayed. I had a couple of campus offers, both from Infosys and Cognizant. Both were delayed by a few months. I ended up joining Infosys. I stayed there for a few months during the training. Eventually, Cognizant offer came alive. They gave a rolling out date, and then I stuck on to Cognizant. The good part of me moving into Cognizant was the fact that it was giving me a telecom opportunity to work into the telecom space. So I was able to connect back to what my interest levels were. I worked on a client called Huawei, wherein I was trying to develop calls that users like you and me work. Back in the day, I did work on an Airtel 4G migration that today everybody is using. If you're using LTE network, somewhere back end, the code belongs to some part of me. That was in 2010. So I stuck by Cognizant for 2.5 years. Then I worked for a contract position with Google, wherein I did not enjoy the contract position that much. So I thought I was leaning more towards the data side of things. And I wanted to do my master's. So I moved to US, pursued my master's in information management, or acronymed as MIS, in Masters in Information Systems. A lot of people say that. It was a 2-year course. I winded up that course in a year. Was lucky enough to bag a scholarship with the university itself, and then got an internship with Bank of America. I joined them as a full-time, worked in New York City and then in Florida. And then one day I was trying to shop with Amazon. I ended up filing a job for Amazon late at night, and I got an interview call, and it's been last 4 years I've been with Amazon. When I joined with Amazon, I joined as a program manager. the space was much open. I had to work with a lot of product managers around, but eventually I moved into and phased out being a product manager. Now I work into a seller space. Sellers are people that Amazon buys products from and sell it to customers. So I manage that space for the inventory side of things.
Nice one. Good introduction. That's an amazing journey, and yep, I don't see any questions up here. I think let's get to the main part of it.
Okay. All right. So I would talk about some sales trends and the impact. The topics that I'll try to cover during this section are general views, some interesting data points that the industry as an e-commerce has observed, the impact on sales growth so far, how different has it been. We'll talk about the shopper behavior and some of the delivery and supply chain concerns here. Feel free to pause me anywhere you have a question to pop up or anything of that sort.
Sure.
All right. So talking about just the general view of how and what to expect, I think everybody has a unique way of looking at what the situation is. Some look at it at a very positive front, and some look at it on a negative front, just being on what position they are in the industry or how circumstances have impacted them. I try to look at it on a very positive front as dealing with the last recession. I see it brought a lot of opportunities as a whole, and overall increased awareness for me. I think what the current situation to me looks like is a lot of evolution around healthcare is focused. I haven't worked primarily on a healthcare division, but I know a lot of folks like yourself would have worked into the healthcare domain. I think a lot of stress would be paid on that domain. That's something I look at in my future to work into. In fact, just being at Amazon, I know even Amazon is into healthcare now. So with the current situation, how as a company it is dealing and how overall industry is going to move, I think that would be a positive out front. Of course, there are negatives, like there's a lot of economic stress that is going on. There's a lot of tension between a lot of nationalities that is going because of the way situation is. That being aside, I'll try to share as the next slide goes. I'll try to share what interesting things I found out from what the current situation is. These are all the numbers that you see on the slide are more essentially at a quarter level. So every number reflects more or less until March 31st, 2020. And this is more of surveys done by Forbes or CNN that I picked up all these numbers from. These doesn't reflect anything to do with Amazon. What we have noticed is that the e-commerce volume has increased by about 50%, and this has kind of led to the new factor in categories. A lot of categories were driven by this increase just because of lawmakers making reasonable divisions that what is allowed and what is not allowed to be shipped. A lot of countries have put in a lot of guardrails around what could be shipped. I believe India had put a lot of bracket around essentials. So the point two that I'm trying to cover here doesn't necessarily talk about the situation in India, but more essentially talks at a global level. Some countries did not have this lawmaker-driven categories. So a lot of trends that I was able to see was a lot of folks that were ordering stuff were ordering things like fitness equipment. There were housewares that were being ordered. There were a lot of toys and hobby products. A lot of people trying to pick up back their stuff. And because a lot of people have gone work from home, in this situation, a lot of office supplies like monitors and electronics were being ordered. And these account for about 40% of what the consumer spending has been. These do not account anything that I'm trying to talk about, groceries or any essentials like masks. there have been apps and services like Instacart, which is more essentially, I don't know if that's something that's there in India, but it's more essentially somebody represents you and goes and shops on behalf of you in a store of your choice, and you make up an order. These apps have seen a lot of surge in just the downloads itself, and then Walmart as an app has also seen this. Payment services have gone up a huge spike. People that were not very much tech savvy have also moved into digital payments. I think in India, Google Pay and Paytm has drastically. I could not find those numbers, but they have reflected a lot of volume that they are generating at this avid time. In Italy, essentially, because the situation had initially impacted the country a lot, they were able to put out these numbers that they saw an 81% in e-commerce transactions. Um, Ad revenue, and I can talk here a little bit more about this. And I don't know if most of you would have followed the news. Google has got a lot of um volumes in terms of the growth because their ad industry has seen a larger impact, and so has Facebook. I think there was a larger announcement of Google pausing their HQ2 expand, like the 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 later part of fiscal year expansion. Essentially, a lot of positions were on hold. I had a few colleagues whom I talked about, whom I talked to, and they referenced that most of teams have stopped hiring, at least in Google, and that all came because of the ad revenue that generates. Um, in fact, because of all this surge, a lot of companies depend on the cloud, and because of their utilization the way it was, Netflix, which is a large customer of AWS, YouTube and Facebook have reduced streaming quality in Europe just to ensure that there is not enough congestion going on in the current situation. And this particular streaming quality reduction has only impacted in Europe. It hasn't gone into North America or Asia Pacific as far as the reports have come in.
Some interesting numbers, Rohan. So some questions out there, right?
Okay.
There's a lot of payments. So if Amazon Pay is one of the other payment methods, which in the Indian ecosystem it is quite picking up. So is Amazon working something on that? And how in these COVID situations, you have been hearing, right? Because of these payments, there are lots of transactions which get failed. People try to steal money. So how you see that in this situation? How is that being handled? People are not spammed with, or they are not stolen of their money.
Okay, to talk about that's a very very brilliant question. Overall, I think fraud mechanisms have gone up. Surprisingly, even I have had situations being an Amazon employee where I was trying to do a transaction late at an odd timing, and the cards have failed. So I think banks itself have put that measure in where they are monitoring transactions, and any kind of unusual spikes are being alerted as. At Amazon, most interestingly, a lot of people would not know this, but transactions, it takes a while for a transaction to get approved. If Amazon looks at a transaction that does not look legitimate from an account, it tries to throw some kind of an alert to a customer, either through form of an OTP or either through form of some kind of an alert to cross verify. In fact, I've seen working and being a customer at Amazon, if you try to order something unusual, you might end up getting a call from the customer care department to confirm that purchase. So I think the same has been as an industry standard, not just this, but eventually this situation has caused an influx of shopping alerts. So I think the way things are being dealt, it's more of machine learning and not a lot of human behavior that is looking at these algorithms. And as and when these things have alerted, at least at Amazon, I've seen some kind of a human intervention to deal an exclusion.
Nice. And just putting on, so again, we have seen there's a lot of surge in Netflix and YouTube and Facebook, as you told, right? Video streaming and all. What about Amazon Prime? That is also one thing. Like we have seen in India, lots of movies are being released on Prime. What as Prime, even in the US and other countries, how they're dealing with that? Because there's an opportunity, to have more registrations. People, could could watch the online streaming, all that stuff. Do you think that's also one of the strategy Amazon will do?
So certainly there has been a content driven strategy for most players in the market. Talking about the number of registrations, or talking about active users on Amazon, that's a data Amazon doesn't try to give out, and you would notice in even quarterly earnings, or even any kind of public announcements, Amazon doesn't try to declare that data out. But certainly, given there's a large volume of users that have moved into streaming services, there has been a lot of pickup on such things. In fact, you'll be surprised, a lot of streaming services, including Amazon, have started rolling out subscriptions as free trials for more than the period that was initially being offered before the situation. So example, if Prime Music was free for 30 days, now I see a banner like Prime Music free for 90 days. So it's trying to roll out and give out these streaming services for a longer time to try to a customer, than having and trying to make the most money out of that situation. Because I think we all agree to the fact that this situation is not relaxing anytime soon. It will take a while for businesses to resume normal. So I think most of people, the way their entertainment is dedicated right now is purely screen based, or technology based. So I think overall Amazon has been picking up in the space, and in fact I've seen a lot of titles getting released lately, and those are mostly driven, I think, just because of the way the production companies are looking at what the user base is expecting right now.
Nice. So we have a question. So someone has asked, did the COVID situation affect the supply side for Amazon? I know Amazon has its own logistics system in the US. Overall, any trends on that side?
I can't talk about the trends from a supply chain. What I can do talk about is the fact that a lot of inventory that Amazon procures is dependent on sellers' supply chain. So the inventory that flows into Amazon warehouse necessarily has a bottleneck because of how the supply chain of its sellers have been triggered, and not just have those sellers been impacted, but the logistically a lot of airline industries have impacted. So if freight is not moving, there have been legitimate impacts. I've seen things getting delayed by over a month just because there are inventory shortages or inventory not reaching Amazon warehouse. I'll talk a little bit more about how the Amazon model works for you to kind of understand how Amazon has been trying to tackle this situation in the later on slides.
Sure, let's go ahead.
Okay. This is a lot of interesting shopper behavior. This is, again, most of it is survey data, and most of it is sourced through surveys. What was interesting to me was a large quantity of shoppers have totally changed the way they used to shop. Of course, just because of the restaurants being shut, almost 75% of consumers are relying either on delivery or takeaways. But surprisingly, about 96% of millennials and Gen Zs have kind of changed. They are kind of stocking up things. That is a reason of a lot of surge that we initially saw, the toilet paper wars, I would say. Most of them, I would say, were driven by all age groups, but there was a large section of millennials or Gen Zs putting their best step ahead. There have been an increasing trend on how online video content has been changing. YouTube, which itself was a bigger platform, did see a rise, and so did another brand called TikTok, which is coming up. I think more essentially these days have been picked up. About 58% of Gen Z audiences have been using these platforms uh, over the last quarter. There have been change in men and women's behavior. It shows that women are more likely concerned about the effects, and about 40% of men agree that the news um, is impacting them on their purchases. More men are buying additional groceries and even in avoiding in-store environment, which was not something that was there before. More men are actually shopping online compared to women. This was not the trend prior to the situation. Um, Netflix, Disney Plus, and Spotify have seen a lot of rise in their subscriptions. About 43% of folks have considered to buy subscriptions, and this is more essentially driven by Gen Zs and millennials. Previously, I think there were a lot of less people on streaming platforms, but I think with the way people are losing on content on one platform, people are moving from one platform to another. So this might not reflect um, the concurrent data, but it is kind of reflecting an overall trend what the industry has seen.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the next one. Talking about delivery and supply chain concerns. We all know people belonging to a supply chain background that any problems arising in this whole chain, it takes time to resolve. Like it's not as simple as it sounds to be. Um, and eventually, like most of the things are trying to move into digital right now. So the transformation that companies or organizations were making before this whole situation had arisen around COVID, were these technology transformations ready for this volume? Uh, that is something we have seen uh, outside of the big players. Not a lot of companies or organizations were kind of ready for this spike. Initial disruptions actually had hit China and then Italy. So a lot of logistic and a lot of reliance on countries like China are kind of the source of a lot of supply chain. So eventually, when China was shut down, even though the world was not much affected because of that coronavirus situation, they were looking at and facing disruptions, at least at a supply chain level. So things that were procured maybe in a week's time at an organization or a warehouse were taking a longer lead times to procure. And eventually, when the virus had started spreading more across the globe, these situations became worse. In fact, uh, a lot of organizations and a lot of countries were focused on making sure that medical supplies were a priority, and any other things were not a priority to be shipped. So all these containers that were trying to move were more essentially either moving empty or moving just with limited amount of supplies that they were. Talking about the costs, a lot of freight moves with contract agreements, and given the situation where we are in, this clause of coronavirus or any kind of pandemic is not something that I think organizations into freight were informed to have these things incurred into. So with the lawmaking things coming into play, a lot of things required sanitization, which means you need extra folks and extra things to make sure things can freight into or can transport. And now it was at a question of the economic standpoint as to who will own this monetization around the fact of paying expenses for such things. There have been risks that organizations were expected to take, and not anybody would want to dirty their hands into litigations that will come along with it. And at the end of it, a lot of deliveries, the last mile, either resides on a human or some kind of a human intervention, which puts a lot of risk into picture, any kind of contamination risk, be it on the package or be it on just the box itself. And this is more essentially, I think, that increase the front end supply chain concerns that as a customer you would see. The back end were more triggered around how soon can the procurement hit and whether or not logistically things were moving the way they were moving.
Okay. That's an interesting fact. So I have a question here, Ron. So, we all know that, China has a great dependency on the supply chain. Now, we have been hearing around that, there might be many sanctions on China. How do you feel then, how would sellers will behave, and also how will the demand will change? Because someone who needs a mobile phone or a electronic spare part is much cheaper when it comes from China than it is procured locally, right? And obviously, being price conscious markets, especially on the e-commerce business, how do you see that this is going any way forward?
I think from what I see, this is the fact that uh, because as an industry, the way things have been impacted from China, procurement would become reasonably difficult as time will go. Countries might enter into trade wars with China, which might at the end result increase surges on taxes and excise duties that might cause a surge on prices at the end customer will have to pay. I don't see it would change anything from an organization standpoint to procure things. Overhead costs would increase and that would flow into the end customer. So for example, if you were paying $10 for something, then excise duty might end up costing you the same thing by a by a few dollars up or down. I don't see it going down anytime soon, just because even airfares or logistical movements have increased just because those as a transport mechanism have gone up. In fact, a lot of companies have started paying employees much higher wages at this time of situation, and those wages are nothing but coming out from customers' pockets. So uh, there was an article about even Amazon increasing wages to employees that are working in this situation. Similar things have been done across the globe by other companies, but that's just going to increase an influx of prices.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay. Moving along, this slide is more focused at how organizations could take actions and how can they avoid and build resilience around the situation. So I think overall, a lot of organizations have to rethink the way their supply chain moves. Some organizations that are small scale businesses are very physical when it comes to supply chain. I think they need to start thinking on how can they decentralize their warehousing, or how can they decentralize um, their links essentially to procure things. Um, Companies or organizations have to look at their forecasting capabilities. They have to probably learn from trends and lean into machine learning, I think, to look at trends and be fit to be able to meet these demands. A lot of regular metrics, I think, from a supply chain perspective, the way things are measured in metrics. These metrics need to be improved. A new metric mechanism has to brought in, like resilience and responsiveness around the situation. These are very supply chain aspects of looking at these things. Um, a lot of transparency has to come in between your relationships with your suppliers or vendors. I think uh, more uh, adoption of the way they do business currently has to change in, and it could be either logistically or the way things are being shipped. Sometimes your suppliers are trying to send all the inventory to one warehouse. I think we need to look at different mechanisms on how can you reduce the dependencies that you have brought in between these links. Outside of this, there has to be a lot of transformation on your digitalization, on how you are making sure you are into an ERP mechanism where there's a complete visibility of how your supply chain and your automation is moving within your warehouses. I think it's essential that the way systems are built or the way things are being used, that have to be thoughtful, that have to be thought differently and have to be developed. And if there's a tech dependency, I think that will come with a cost around it. And then companies have to be ready, because situations like this could always reappear.
Sure. Cool. That's something. Yes, we will be looking forward, and I think this is just not. It's like an ecosystem is an e-commerce across the world. This would change. Obviously, dependencies. With other countries, with all those sanctions, and as you told, the logistics cost, delivery cost increasing. I think local procurement would be the way out in the future.
Yeah,
that's gonna be there.
Okay.
Sure. Thanks.
So I'm going to stop, and if there are questions, feel free to pick it up before I move into the next section for Amazon readiness.
I think people will keep pinging their question as they go. Let's move forward. I don't have anything right now in the chat.
Okay. In this section, I'll talk about what Amazon shipping model is and how Amazon tried to organize around the chaos. I'll talk about a little bit about what a black swan theory is. Those of you in probably would have learned this in their MBAs. If not MBAs, a lot of book readers would have come across this theory into the way they work. And then I'll open the forum for questions after this.
Sure.
So generally speaking, for an outsider, Amazon has two shipping models. One, they call it as an FBA, and what is an FBM. So FBA stands for fulfillment by Amazon. FBM stands for fulfillment by merchant. There's another model called retail, which is purely mostly in US. We'll not talk more about it, just for the sense of keeping this conversation very tight. So what is FBM and what is FBA? So imagine you're trying to shop on Amazon. You go to the store and you order something, and you get that stuff to you shipped. Now, how as a customer would you know what is Amazon FBM versus what is FBA? So just by the name itself, fulfillment by merchant, which just means that if a customer, you're ordering stuff from Amazon site, try to think there is a seller who's listing an item. That item, the inventory of that item, is not living in the warehouse of Amazon. So that merchant is actually shipping you the stuff directly from his warehouse and just using Amazon as a platform to sell that product. Amazon makes a cut from this purchase, but does not own anything with what it comes as Prime or anything that comes as delivery promise in terms of time or in terms of anything to do with the experience that Amazon brings in. FBA is different. What FBA stands is fulfillment by Amazon. What that means is, as a seller, I may be listing an item on Amazon, but it's my duty to send that item into an Amazon warehouse. And once that item is procured into the Amazon warehouse, then only my listing will go on the live as live on the site as live. And then as a customer, when I'm shopping in, when I buy that, it would be written as fulfilled by XYZ, but shipped by Amazon. In the next slide, let's take a look at what a website on a detail page shows what this means. So this is nothing but a detail page snippet that I picked up from Google Images. This shows a product on the UK website. So if you look at the right side, this is what is called a buy box of an item. On the down, it says buy box seller. So what that means is it says sold by Anna Viz Limited and fulfilled by Amazon. What that means is this is an FBA listing. That is why this says fulfilled by Amazon, which means this item is living in an Amazon warehouse. If somebody is interested to buy this item from a merchant fulfillment network. That's the lower right section, which talks about features sellers. This means that these items probably are not living in the warehouse. So you likely would end up shopping those items directly from the merchant. The difference in between FBA and FBM is that all items on FBA are prime enrolled, essentially. They have a buy box eligibility. Amazon is responsible to fill its orders. Amazon is responsible to make sure it's packed in the right state and the way it is shipped, and takes care of the customer service. So let's say if you don't like the item or you have a concern with it, you contact Amazon for a return. That's potentially the way to go about. That's something Amazon will take care at that moment. But it comes with a cost. So if as a seller, I'm listing an item, I'm giving Amazon the responsibility. So I am responsible to being charged from Amazon for the packing, for the warehouse, shipping, and the storage and every other fees associated. In an FBM side, to contrast, it's more about my inventory being with me. It is something that would be procured probably at a slower speed, more essentially. And you would have seen large items like sometimes appliances or I would say furniture items are more essentially what Amazon doesn't try to procure. And that can fall into a category of FBM, or even you would see some cheap cases, phone cases sometimes fall into FBM categories. As a seller, they have an option to enroll both into FBA and FBM. So what you see in the previous slide here, Amazon sellers actually fight for this buy box. So it is something at a prime level that sellers compete with prices to give the best price to the customer. So whatever you see as Anna Viz in this slide, probably they were offering the cheapest price, and that's why they are listed here. If a new seller who's also selling the same item and wants to sell it and fulfilled by Amazon, they would end up listing their item if they're able to drop this price of £9.95. Let's say they listed at $9 itself, so probably they will win the buy box essentially. So, and it could be another seller probably selling the same item. So that is FBA versus FBM. Any questions so far?
So this is an interesting concept. So what happens? Can there be a situation, or if you guys have seen it, that someone who's selling in an FBA is a higher price than someone in an FBM selling at a lower price? That might be possible, right?
Oh yes, 100%. But usually you would see FBM items will always come with delivery charges. They usually charge separately for deliveries. Sometimes they say that, sometimes it's included, but you come with a risk that you shop, you are responsible for the returns that it associates. If you are okay with the delivery speed around that item being procured, feel free to shop on that. But more essentially, I've seen sellers trying to move into FBA just because there's a lot of management that comes around that inventory, because shipping inventories to customers is an expensive deal. So shipping companies have contracts with companies like Amazon, and they offer cheaper price. That's why sellers try to enroll into FBA programs to take advantage of those shipping prices.
That's okay. And what happens, if the inventory is piling on? So, for example, I as a seller enroll into an FBA, and nobody's buying my products. So probably there's a limited bit of it. Does Amazon have a program which helps the seller, that how he can sell more, or something that to guide that you have to reduce the pricing or
Yes.
something of that sort?
So these kind of alerts go in and out to sellers at a very automated fashion. You can read more about these things on on seller.amazon.com if you sign up as a seller. There's a lot of education element that comes with your item. So if your item is not selling a lot, Amazon will try to give you hints in forms of alerts of what what may change. I've seen sellers that sometimes sellers even encourage themselves to spending on ads on Amazon. So Amazon itself as a platform show featured products, which are nothing but products that are on page one of what the search term could be. Sometimes Amazon looks at the way user behavior has been, and at the end of the day, a product is listed on Amazon based on what catalog elements or attributes make that product page. So sometimes it is a lack of the knowledge on the seller front that they don't know how to list their products properly, and that is the reason a lot of small scale companies sit around Amazon. When I say sit around Amazon, meaning they have a dependency on Amazon to make money, is they are trying to help sellers to sell more. So sometimes sellers are not directly interacting with Amazon, but they are actually interacting with these companies, and they are basically helping set up these pages for these sellers. So as a seller, I may be $1 million seller in terms of inventory, but I may not have the best um, strength in terms of people that want to list products on the website. So there are companies who help and support these sellers. But coming to a small scale seller, yes, there are alerts and things that Amazon send in forms of notifications, or what you could do as a seller to improve your listing experience and probably bring a boost on scale on sales.
Okay, and uh, even your seller program, how is the COVID situation gonna change guidelines here? Again, because it becomes more stringent. For example, someone, if you take an example, was procuring toilet papers. If someone was selling through an FBA, now with this COVID situation, that things would change. How do you handle that? We have seen malpractices of people increasing the price to double just to earn extra cost. So how does Amazon take care of that?
So that is itself a separate conversation, which calls as price gouging. Amazon has taken a legal way to take down all listings that have gone and taken the route of price gouging. I think in India we have a cap of a maximum retail price, so technically a product cannot go beyond a certain price. But that's not the case with most other markets around the world. So in those cases, Amazon has taken a very strict policy of giving no chance to a seller. If a listing has gone beyond a certain price threshold, has an influx in the last few days because of coronavirus situation, those listings have been taken down. In fact, a lot of seller accounts have been suspended. So any kind of payments that were trying to go out from a seller side have gone out. And this is more very confidential and discreet topic that I think a lot of media stories have covered what kind of things have Amazon taken in this route, and in fact, this has been one of the bigger things I think in the last 90 days that our team and myself were trying to deal with this whole situation about how price gouging has to be looked at, because there are dirty players in the market that were trying to make the best of the situation, and these players were like probably 1,000 inventory counts being sold in a month. Suddenly you see a spike of about uh, 20,000 inventory counts going in a day, and these were things necessarily not very usual, but these were things just because uh, they were interesting user behaviors that they were trying to shop, and they saw no competition and they raised prices. But um, we have most companies, like organizations, have pricing teams that look at competitor data to try and compare how the pricing across an item is being listed. So price gouging necessarily doesn't mean that a price has been increased on just the platform itself, but across the industry in different competitors.
Got it. Fair enough, Ron.
Okay.
Yep.
So moving along, I'll talk a little bit about how Amazon tried to organize the chaos. We say this term a lot at our work. So as we all know, Amazon is very well equipped of taking a lot of packages, about in millions per day. But I think these events usually happen like a few times in a year, sometimes a Prime Day, sometimes at I think the Great Indian Sale or something around that, or even I think when it comes down to Black Friday events. Um, as a company, Amazon was prepared to handle this kind of a traffic. but I think as a company it was not prepared from a warehouse worker or a delivery driver aspect, because when Prime Day or Black Friday events happen, the hiring for workers or delivery drivers happen way ahead of time in months. uh, Now this was something as a situation when it had hit. I think in a very short span of time, Amazon ended up hiring a large workforce of workers and delivery drivers to meet this demand. In fact, not even that aspect into picture, but at warehouses, I think there were a lot of social distancing rules that were put into place, which kind of slowed down the average speed with which a package goes out the Amazon warehouse door. So these practices were taken into account. And I think there's a lot of lean that goes into picture to come up and how things were moving. Uh, not even just on the fulfillment side, but even there was a lot of influx on the seller subscriptions or seller being enrolling on the platform. A lot of brick and mortar stores that were selling stuff, and they were not seeing folks coming in to shop. So if, for example, I have a boutique and probably I have a set number of customers coming in because of this lockdown situation. Now I'm not seeing that business flowing into me. Now, how do I sell and how do I make money? So as a boutique owner, I might go on Amazon and list myself as a seller and start selling. So there there was a lot of sellers that started popping up on the platform and started listing products. So we saw a huge amount of detail pages of products being rolled out. And in fact, what you say is non-essential, there was a lot of terminology that has come up because of people trying to pick up interests and things and hobbies. So a lot of products that were necessarily very short on supply or even listed on Amazon were not necessarily being sold. Now that caused an influx of things. Um, Third-party merchants increased on the platform, and sellers started selling more. Um, Talking more from a demand and supply level, there were a lot of that what we observed was there were a lot of logical bottlenecks that were being looked at from a warehouse front, because um, uh, from what we say as a shipment notice that we get from a seller, we are expecting certain items to come into the warehouse by a certain date, which means it has to be moved from one warehouse to another warehouse to be available on the site for a customer to purchase. Because of these bottlenecks, we ended up at Amazon. We ended up freezing a lot of FBA shipments for non-essential items, just because we were not able to meet the procurement timelines around those things. And given that there was a lot of back and forth between Amazon as sellers, and uh, there is an existing logical challenge that remains for sellers, and that's something as time goes by that will improve. Given that there was even a public notice that were driven to the community, at least on the customer front, that Amazon as a whole would be prioritizing shipping items like medical supplies or household staples. um, and it even included things like baby products, around personal hygiene and pet supplies. But other items, like for example, I had ordered a mouse for myself, for my computer, and I just couldn't get it for like a good amount of 3 weeks. That was a very normal thing that I would expect to come to me in a day, living in a city like Seattle. And that was not something I was able to procure. And looking at being an employee at Amazon, I'm looking at the procurement for it, and I just don't see the item being shipped from the seller itself. So these kind of I still have items that have not shipped at all, like they are just sitting with dates being changed. So I've seen items for over a month that have gone in. Um, Something outside of this slide I can talk more as from what I have seen. Technologically, Amazon was kind of prepared to handle the situation, but I think the dependency piece, when it comes down to logistical dependency, I don't think so. Any company or anybody would have been prepared for that, because that's a dependency outside of Amazon. Doesn't make things like everything. It has channels that it has dependency on, and if those channels are impacted or logistically they are impacted, things will take time to procure. I think, in fact, in India, there were a lot of larger sections of demographics that were not even allowing shipments to come in. So I think for over 2 to 3 weeks there were not even any kind of deliveries. Even essentials were not being procured just because of the government mandate. I think this stopped in France as well. So some countries had relaxed rules for things to ship out, for things that were there in inventory, but I think rules have started relaxing as we are seeing the time is going by.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay. This is the last topic of the day. So this is what is called a black swan theory. So those of you who don't know, it's a metaphor, we say. It describes an event that comes with a surprise, has a major effect, and is often inappropriately rationalized after the fact within the benefit of hindsight. So I think overall, if you look at the situation that is there, um, it has definitely caused a lot of hardship from an economic standpoint that nobody could have imagined or could have thought about. Policymakers, which are lawmakers, are basically using the data right now and probably would plan for a better future if any kind of crisis would occur, be it a pandemic or any other crisis. Um, Many companies that are seeing this thing or handling this kind of traffic, or probably have not been prepared for to handle this situation, would likely uh, what have done their best in the situation, but would learn from what they could have done much better. And I'm assuming there would be a lot of visions that will change. There will be a lot of leadership activities that will happen after this situation gets better, and I think all of that holds a better future for us. So that ends the session I was trying to give in. This is a resources slide. Like always, stay safe. I know we are living in a time that nobody has seen. It's a time that I don't think so would come anytime like this, and it's a great story that it'll make for us. Um, I open the room for questions.
So nice. Thanks. Um, Thanks, Rohan. Thanks for the session. We'll wait a minute or so for people to type in questions in case they have. Um,
Okay.
right now, Amit has asked, can we get the resources, the slides, please? Amit, if you go, just scroll up. Rohan has already shared the link, and we'll also share it with you again. Don't worry about that. Cool, Rohan. So informative sessions, yeah, we I have seen. I agree that it's a difficult situation, and really, e-commerce has been helping. Even in India, at least Amazon is trying to procure the essentials. As you told, the government mandate is there. Also, it's happy to hear at least they're providing jobs in the situations, um, and helping even sellers and buyers to connect, which is good, all avoiding all the malpractices too. So that's appreciated out here. um so I am still waiting for the questions. Yep, there's something from Shruti. If you follow Indian market of e-commerce, Zomato just laid off a lot of people, considering that they're a booming grocery delivery section. Is that normal?
I think some industries have been impacted. So I was reading this whole thing. Airbnb itself also laid off a lot of people. I think there have been specific industries that were impacted the most. I did read news about Zomato. I think a lot of their platform has a revenue coming on from deliveries, online deliveries as food. I think as Zomato was also in news for one of the coronavirus driver delivering some food element. I think it was a pizza delivery or something of that sort. So
Yes,
I
it
think
was.
I think any negative news does bring in effects of people changing their behavior towards how they are shopping or trending uh, um, their stuff. And I think given the situation what we are, every company tries to use sanitization methods, but if there's an industry, if there's a consumer trend that is coming along, companies end up paying the price. So when I was reading about Airbnb as a company, I think the final words from the CEO were very, very. He was very emotional in those words, the way he had written those emails. Necessarily, I don't think so. The company wanted to have that layoff happen, but eventually they were out of resources, and I think this could hit the same way in Zomato too. It's more essentially company is dependent on consumers. At the end of the day, it's a consumer based model, the way Zomato works, and I think restaurant as it falls into a travel side of things, it's largely impacted. I don't see. I would not be surprised if in future, I think there are more delivery companies like Uber. Uber also laid off employees, but I think I would not be surprised if I see Indian players like Swiggy also laying off of folks if that news comes along.
Okay. So, yep. Even I know that even Zomato has been, even the Zomato CEO was also emotional when laying off, and it's just quite expected, right? Because they've even cut down salaries by 50% for the leadership, and that's expected because, as you told, right, it's a consumer model. If they're not making any revenues, it's hard to survive. Even at this time, even investors are not going to invest any money because future bets is quite difficult in that space, as
I
you
mean, I
know.
think overall, a lot of money that is living in stocks is kind of gone down. Like a lot of stocks are not doing well. So a lot of investor money that is sitting even to get invested is not realistically a lot of liquidated. Like I would say that is not good enough for them to sell their investment at this point of time, given the situation we are in. So even if the investor wants to help somebody and wants to pick up a company, probably his portfolio is in all in reds. He doesn't have a lot of money sitting at cash to kind of help in.
Sure. So then one more. Yeah, now they are flooding with questions.
Right.
So unorganized sector, small-time retailers who depend on daily sales will move towards organized e-com way of selling. Think of a trader on a commercial street in Bangalore only sells for the volume of footfall in the market.
I think necessarily they will move. The way I was looking at some apps in India, I was looking at Swiggy, I think, and I was also looking at Zomato. I think they have started partnering with small shops and listing their inventory on their app. So basically, it's kind of a model. I think as a whole industry will move, and small shopkeepers would try to list their items on bigger platforms and use them as a channel to sell products. It's likely to happen, and as I see, uh, big players would not be behind in this race. They would likely try to take the most out of the opportunity and try to capitalize it. But eventually, that will give a benefit of a lot of monetization to small players. I don't see that going around. So I have my parents who are in India who are dependent on markets around their neighborhood, but being elderly, they're not going out to shop stuff, so they have accustomed themselves now to start using Swiggy and ordering 4 packets of milk through Swiggy, and that's very unusual. I would have never done probably when I was in India. I did not even know that you could order milk from a small shopkeeper that is listed on Swiggy itself. So I think some platforms are doing well that ways, but I think this will be a permanent place for these shops because there's a very small uh, percentage of money that you have to pay for delivery services. It's a lot of time that you save. I think this will be a normal norm. Essentially, this will become a permanent norm.
There's a quick question about, how about companies like Amazon.
I'm sorry. Could you repeat?
So someone is asking about how is the talent search or hiring patterns changing at Amazon?
I think overall, Amazon is hiring right now, given the situation we are in, because things are moving. in the right direction when it comes to people buying stuff from Amazon. So as customers, you and me shop on Amazon, so there is always a need of people. From a talent perspective, what I've seen different is interviews have started happening on video calls, which was never a norm previously. Looking at candidates profiles, I think goes a lot into sourcing candidates. That has definitely always been online, so that hasn't impacted much. But the way we interview candidates, the experience that a candidate goes through during an entire day of interviews, that has changed drastically. In fact, this season, all the interns are remotely working, and so are people that are joining in now remotely working. So that interaction, the human to human interaction, has gone down. But from a communication perspective, our regular communication has increased. Um, from an end customer level, whenever we try to hire somebody at Amazon, we try to give the best experience, because at the end of the day, we would like to preserve that person as a customer to Amazon. So I don't think so that experience is compromised anywhere in this whole cycle of events. But I encourage anybody and everybody who is not working at Amazon and wants to work at Amazon. Amazon is still hiring, and I can't say much about uh, um, other players in market, but necessarily any big player that is in the business of e-commerce would be hiring at this point of time, just because of the shift of the industry into e-commerce.
Um, Someone asked anything PMs at Amazon doing apart from the KRAs?
Oh yes. So a lot of focus prior to the situation for a PM was working to make sure to ship products that are very user centric. Lately, we have had a lot of shift on our regular day-to-day, move into a lot of operational aspect to it. So for example, price gouging, to deal that entire situation that we have not seen at a large scale like this, um, there was a lot of focus on the product teams itself to first look at the data side of things manually, to come up with recommendations on how can we make policies and how can we protect our end customer, be it from an experience side or be it from a from the price gouging activity. So I think operationally, I spent a few weeks looking at a lot of cases that were flowing into our team for investigations, and our department has a separate whole organization for operations that itself deals in investigations. But a large set of those cases for audits were coming into our bucket, which was a large part of what not a PM does essentially in day to day. That had changed. An entire cycle of focus has been on how can we so I work in the inventory space, so how I have played a lot of focus into how can our tools that we use be able to adapt to situations that have triggered the influx of orders that are flowing in. There are not a lot of metrics that these tools that I use to reflect and perform the searches. So my key area has been around on developing those products, which was not something uh, I would have paid much more attention given the situation we are in. We have a vision that I was working towards, and aside of that, now my responsibilities have also diversified. That necessarily doesn't mean I'm working long hours. It just means that my focus has been different in the situation.
Okay, cool, Rohan. So let's take the last one for the day. So someone is asking about, you have your work life, you had recessions, you have COVID. So in terms of big businesses, how they have changed their business models or something like that in these situations?
I think overall, um, the way I'm looking at big businesses, they are a lot of businesses are very people dependent, I think, overall. And that results into each of these occasions that we have seen as recession or COVID, that has resulted into layoffs. I think a lot of dependency from companies of having a large strength of employees and focusing on a large set of opportunities would reduce down, and they'll try to keep a lot of focus on what they want to deliver immediately, just to come out of the situation overall. But I think there would be, post this situation improves, I think companies would play a large focus on how, as a consumer, behaviors would have changed. So there is a large quantity of research that happens in companies, be it economic, be it a psychological research that goes into when products are shaped. That was never, I think, the key indicator for thinking through in what we would want to launch into the industry. And now that could be any kind of products, be it entertainment products, or be it very consumer touch based products like a mobile phone. Overall, the industry would look at user behaviors or data, the data that we are trying to, the data that we have used in the past to develop things, more largely would not just reflect what this current situation is. This current situation would develop a new set of data, I think, that would come into effect in rolling out what the vision of companies would be and what they would like to work for. And I think key players like Zoom that we are using, and Google Meets, and these key players that are cloud dependent were not market toppers, I would say. They were not capturing the market, but these players have emerged out of this opportunity. So I'm likely to see a lot of companies shifting their focus into cloud-based technologies, relying on cloud for their system. So I expect a lot of technologically reforms across the board.
Thanks, Rohan. I think in the interest of time, let's stop here. Thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for
You're
taking
welcome.
all the questions. Uh, Appreciate your time here. Also, your slides, some content was just really appreciated the data points. It gives a great insight to everyone. Um, so that's it, Rohan. Looking forward to you meeting anyway, probably, in person, if we can have our whole group probably sometime soon if this COVID situations end.
Yes, hopefully.
Hopefully, and that's it. Appreciate it. Thanks very much. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thanks.
Take care. Bye
Bye.
bye.